Marcus Johnson walked down Pine Street at 11:30 on a Tuesday night. His black military boots made soft sounds on the sidewalk. The streetlights cast long shadows between the houses. Most windows were dark. People in Riverside Heights went to bed early. Marcus had been home for 3 days. 3 days since his transport ship landed at the military base. 3 days since he finished his third tour with Earth's Special Operations Command. The alien wars in the outer colonies were over for him, at least for now. He could not sleep. His body still thought he was on Kepler Station, where the days lasted 30 hours. His mind still listened for sounds that meant danger. Back there, a quiet night meant the enemy was planning something. Here, quiet just meant people were sleeping. The neighborhood looked the same as when he left 2 years ago. Same white houses with small front yards, same perfect grass cut to the exact same height, same mailboxes painted in regulation colors. The homeowner association made sure everything looked right. Marcus remembered getting letters from his sister Katie while he was deployed. She wrote about the new HOA rules, new security measures, new people in charge who cared a lot about keeping the neighborhood safe and orderly. Katie thought it was good. She felt safer with security patrols and stricter rules. A car drove past, him slowly. The driver looked at Marcus through the window. Marcus noticed the car had HOA security written on the side in neat blue letters. He had never seen HOA cars before he left. The neighborhood used to hire a private company that drove. Through once per night, Marcus kept walking. He passed the house where old Mr. Chen used to live. A new family lived there now. The yard looked different. Everything was too perfect. The flowers were planted in straight lines. Even the stones around the flower bed were the same size. Addie's so. The corner of Pine and Oak, Marcus stopped. A man stepped out from behind a tree. The man wore a dark blue uniform with patches that said HOA Security. He had a badge on his chest and a radio on his shoulder. A gun hung from his belt in a black holster. "Excuse me," the security man said. His voice sounded strange. The words came out too careful, like he was thinking about each one before he said it. "I need to see some identification." Marcus looked at the man closely. Something felt wrong. The uniform looked real, but the man wearing it did not move like a real security guard. His shoulders were too straight. His head turned in small, jerky movements. His eyes blinked at the exact same speed every time. "Is there a problem, officer?" Marcus asked. He used his calm voice, the same voice he used when talking to nervous civilians in war zones. "You are walking in a suspicious manner," the security man said. "It is past the approved time for pedestrian activity. I must verify your identity and residence status." Marcus almost smiled. No real cop talked like that. Real cops said things like, "What are you doing out here so late?" or "Do you live around here?" This man sounded like he learned English from a book. A very formal book. "I live at 247 Pine Street," Marcus said. "I'm walking because I can't sleep." "Is that against the law?" The security man's hand moved toward his gun. Sarcasm and resistance. To authority indicate hostile intent. Place your hands where I can see them. Now Marcus knew something was very wrong. He had trained with police and security forces on dozens of worlds. None of them acted like this. None of them escalated a simple conversation this fast, and none of them used words like hostile intent when talking to someone taking a walk. Marcus raised his hand slowly. At the same time, he shifted his weight to his left foot. He turned his body slightly so his right side faced away from the man. Small movements that looked like cooperation but put him in a better position if things went bad. "Step closer," the security man ordered. "Keep your hands visible." Marcus took one step forward. Now he could see the man's gun better. It looked wrong. The shape was close to a normal pistol, but the barrel was too thick. The grip had small lights on it that pulsed in a steady rhythm. No earth weapon looked like that. "What department do you work for?" Marcus asked. "What's your badge number?" The man blinked 3 times very fast, like the questions confused him. "I am authorized security personnel for this residential zone. You will comply with identification procedures." Marcus had heard enough. The weird speech patterns, the strange gun, the way the man moved like he was wearing someone else's body. 3 tours fighting aliens had taught Marcus what to look for. This was not a human being. "Sure thing," Marcus said. He reached slowly toward his back pocket like he was going for his wallet. The fake security guard relaxed slightly. Big mistake. Marcus had learned hand-to-hand combat from the best teachers in the galaxy, human special forces trained with alien, martial arts masters. They learned techniques that worked against different body types and reflexes. Speed was important, but timing was everything. The fake guard started to smile when Marcus reached for his pocket. The smile looked wrong on his face, too wide, too many teeth showing. In that moment of relaxation, Marcus moved. His left hand shot forward and grabbed the alien's wrist before the creature could draw its weapon. His right hand came up in a sharp strike to the solar plexus. The alien made a sound like air leaking from a tire. Marcus twisted the wrist and stepped behind the creature, pulling its arm up between its shoulder blades. The alien was strong, but it fought like it had learned combat from watching videos. It tried to break free using moves that worked against other aliens but not against someone trained to fight multiple species. Marcus applied pressure to specific nerve points. The alien's legs gave out. In 15 seconds, the fake security guard was unconscious on the sidewalk. Marcus checked his pulse. Still alive, but completely out. The creature's skin felt too warm and had a weird texture like rubber. Marcus looked around the quiet street. No one had seen the fight. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts. Colonel Patricia Hayes answered on the first ring. "Marcus, you're supposed to be on leave. I need an extraction team at Pine and Oak and Riverside Heights. I've got a hostile alien posing as local security." There was silence on the phone for 3 seconds. "Are you certain?" Marcus looked down at the unconscious creature. Its face was starting to change. The features were shifting back to something definitely not human. "Very certain, Colonel, and I think we have a bigger problem than just one infiltrator." Colonel Patricia Hayes arrived in 20 minutes with a full team. Marcus watched from his front porch as black vehicles filled the street. Soldiers in combat gear secured the area, while medical personnel examined the unconscious alien. "Tell me exactly what happened," Colonel Hayes said. She sat next to Marcus on his porch steps. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were sharp. Patricia had been his commanding officer for 5 years. She knew when something was serious. Marcus described the encounter, the strange speech patterns, the wrong kind of gun, the way the creature moved like it was wearing a costume. Patricia listened without interrupting. When he finished, she nodded slowly. "We've been tracking unusual activity in civilian areas," she said. "Reports of new authority figures who don't check out, security companies that don't exist, local officials who showed up with perfect credentials but no real history." Dr. Lisa Rodriguez walked over from the medical team. She carried a tablet with scan results. "It's definitely Zelkan," she said. "Military-grade biomods and neural implants. This isn't some random scout. This is a trained operative." Marcus knew about Zelkans from the war. They were shapeshifters who could look like almost any humanoid species. Smart and dangerous, but they had weaknesses. They studied other cultures by watching and reading, but they didn't understand how those cultures really worked. "What was he doing here?" Marcus asked. "Riverside Heights isn't exactly a strategic target." Dr. Rodriguez scrolled through data on her tablet. "We found interesting equipment in his car, surveillance gear, communication devices, and this." She held up a small device that looked like a metal disc. "It's a neural scanner. He was studying human behavior patterns." Colonel Hayes stood up and walked to the edge of the porch. "Show him the files, Lisa." Dr. Rodriguez handed Marcus the tablet. The screen showed documents written in English, but the style was wrong. Like someone who spoke English perfectly, but had never actually lived with humans. "Subject analysis. Human Residential Zone 7745, Marcus read out loud. "Humans in this area show consistent patterns of submission to authority figures. They respond to uniforms and badges with compliance behavior. They avoid confrontation and seek approval from designated leaders." Marcus kept reading. The files described humans like they were simple animals, predictable, easy to control. The aliens thought showing a badge and speaking in an authoritative, Voice would make any human obey without question. They've been studying us for months, Dr. Rodriguez said. But they completely misunderstood what they were seeing. They watched people follow traffic laws and pay taxes and concluded that humans are naturally submissive. Colonel Hayes came back to the porch. They never bothered to research military veterans. They saw civilians and assumed that's all we were, a species of shopkeepers and office workers who would fold the moment someone threatened them. Marcus thought about his neighbors. Old Frank, who ran the hardware store, had been a Navy SEAL. Nancy, who taught kindergarten, was former Air Force intelligence. The guy who delivered mail had served 3 tours as a Marine sniper. Half the adults in Riverside Heights were veterans, but they looked like regular people. How many infiltrators are there? Marcus asked. We're still finding out, Colonel Hayes said. This operation is bigger than one neighborhood. They've placed agents in positions of local authority all across human space. HOA presidents, security chiefs, city council members, school board officials. Dr. Rodriguez showed Marcus more files from the aliens' equipment. They call it a soft invasion. The plan was to gradually replace key authority figures and weaken human resistance from within. Then when their main fleet arrived, we'd be too confused and disorganized to fight back. Marcus shook his head. They really don't understand us at all. No, they don't, Colonel Hayes agreed. They studied our media and concluded that humans hate conflict and will do anything to avoid trouble. They thought they could intimidate entire populations by pretending to be cops and security guards. The alien was waking up. Marcus could see the medical team restraining it as consciousness returned. The creature's disguise was completely gone now. Its real face was gray with large dark eyes and a mouth full of sharp teeth. What happens now? Marcus asked. Colonel Hayes smiled. It was not a friendly smile. Now we turn their intelligence operation against them. We know how they communicate. We know their staging areas. And thanks to you, we know they have no idea what they're really dealing with. Dr. Rodriguez packed up her equipment. The neural scanner data shows they've been watching this neighborhood for 6 months. They documented every routine, every habit, every sign of what they thought was submissive behavior. But they never noticed the gun safes in garages, the security systems that are way too advanced for civilian use, the way people move like they've had combat training. Marcus looked down the street at his neighbors' houses. Mrs. Peterson, who baked cookies for everyone, had been a military police officer. The young couple who always said hello had met in an Army explosives unit. Even his sister Katie was a veteran, though she worked as an accountant now. They picked the wrong neighborhood, Marcus said. They picked the wrong species, Colonel Hayes corrected. Humans don't separate military and civilian the way other species do. Our warriors live among our families. They run businesses and teach school and fix cars. But when threats appear, they remember their training. The alien was fully awake now, and making angry sounds in its own language. The medical team had it secured in restraints that could hold something 3 times stronger than a human. Its large eyes kept looking around like it was trying to understand how its perfect plan had failed. Colonel Hayes walked over to the alien and spoke in Zelkan. The creature's eyes went wide. It answered in rapid, panicked sentences. Patricia came back to the porch with a grim expression. It confirmed what we suspected, she said. This is phase 1 of a 3-phase invasion plan. They've been placing infiltrators for over a year. Phase 2 was supposed to begin next month with more aggressive actions to destabilize local governments. And phase 3? Marcus asked. Fully par. Military invasion of what they assumed would be a broken and demoralized human civilization. Dr. Rodriguez looked up from her tablet. The creature is confused about why Marcus fought back. According to its research, humans in residential areas never resist authority figures. It keeps asking why a civilian would have combat skills. Marcus stood up and brushed off his jeans. Should we tell it? Colonel Hayes shook her head. Let it figure that out on its own. Right now we have work to do. We need to identify every infiltrator in human space and turn this intelligence disaster into our advantage. The black vehicles were already leaving. The alien was loaded into a secure transport. The street looked normal again except for some scuff marks on the sidewalk where the fight had happened. Marcus's sister Katie came running down the street in her pajamas and a coat. She had been watching from her window 3 houses away. "What happened?" she asked. "Why were there military vehicles on our street?" Marcus looked at Colonel Hayes. She nodded. "Remember the new HOA security guy you mentioned in your letters?" Marcus said. "Turns out he wasn't human." Katie stared at Marcus for a full 10 seconds before speaking. "Not human. You mean like an alien? A real alien?" "The kind we've been fighting in the outer colonies," Marcus said. "The kind that can look like us, but aren't us." Katie sat down, hard on the porch steps. "Kenneth Wright has been our head of security for 8 months. He seems so professional, so concerned about neighborhood safety. He organized block watch meetings and everything." Colonel Hayes pulled out her tablet and showed Katie a photo of the real Kenneth Wright. "This man died in a car accident 9 months ago. 3 days later, your new security chief showed up with perfect credentials and intimate knowledge of HOA procedures." "How many more are there?" Katie asked. "We're about to find out," the colonel said. "Marcus, I need you to come with us. Your experience fighting Zelkans in the field gives you an advantage in spotting them." Marcus nodded. He had learned to recognize subtle signs during 3 tours. The way they moved slightly off rhythm with human reflexes, how they smiled with their mouths but not their eyes, small details that meant the difference between life and death in combat zones. Dr. Rodriguez returned from the transport vehicle with a briefcase full of equipment. "We pulled the complete communication logs from the infiltrator's gear. He's been in regular contact with 43 other agents across 7 star systems." 43, Katie whispered. "There are 43 aliens pretending to be human authorities." "That we know of," Colonel Hayes said. "This communication network only covers the local sector. There could be hundreds more." Marcus studied the data on Dr. Rodriguez's screen. The aliens had been incredibly thorough. They had infiltrated school boards, city councils, police departments, and corporate security divisions. Any position that gave them authority over civilians and access to behavior patterns. "Look at this," Dr. Rodriguez said, pointing to a section of translated text. "They've been filing regular reports on human compliance rates. They measure how quickly humans obey orders from authority figures, how often humans ask questions versus simply following instructions." The data showed graphs and charts analyzing human behavior like a science experiment, response times to different types of commands, effectiveness of various intimidation techniques, success rates for different uniform styles and badge designs. "They think we're lab rats," Marcus said. "Worse," Colonel Hayes replied. "They think we're domesticated lab rats. Look at this assessment report." She scrolled to a document titled Species Psychological Profile, Humans. Marcus read the summary aloud. "Subject species shows high socialization and authority compliance. Minimal resistance to established power structures. Rare instances of individual aggression quickly suppressed by social pressure. Recommended invasion difficulty. Class 2, minimal military preparation required." Katie shook her head. "They have no idea what they're dealing with, do they?" "None at all," Dr. Rodriguez said. "They studied our peacetime behavior and concluded that humans avoid conflict. They never researched our military history or veteran population integration." Marcus's phone rang. The caller ID showed his neighbor Frank, who owned the hardware store. "Marcus, you okay over there?" "Saw a lot of official vehicles, man. I'm fine, Frank. Can you come over for a minute? Bring Nancy and the Johnsons if they're awake." "On our way." Within 5 minutes, 6 neighbors had gathered on Marcus's porch. Frank brought his wife Helen. Nancy came from across the street, still in her teaching clothes. The Johnsons walked over from next door. All of them had been watching from their windows. Colonel Hayes looked at the group and raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess. All veterans?" Frank nodded. "Navy SEALs, retired last year." He pointed to Nancy. "Air Force Intelligence, 15 years. The Johnsons both raised their hands. Army combat engineers." How did you know to call them? Dr. Rodriguez asked Marcus. Because when you live in a neighborhood for 10 years, you get to know people. You hear stories. You recognize how people move and talk. Frank still does security sweeps of his house every night. Nancy notices everything and remembers it all. The Johnsons have way too much technical equipment for people who claim they're just retired. Colonel Hayes smiled. This is exactly what the aliens missed. They saw suburbanites. We see a ready-made resistance cell. Nancy stepped forward. I've been tracking Kenneth Wright since he started. Something about him bothered me, but I couldn't put my finger on it. His background check was too perfect. No messy details, no contradictions. Real people have complicated histories. Frank nodded. Plus, he didn't know basic security procedures. He carried his radio wrong. Held his weapon like he'd learned from pictures instead of training. I figured he was just poorly trained. He was an alien spy, Katie said. They've been studying us for months, planning an invasion. The neighbors took this news remarkably well. Helen Johnson just sighed and said, well, that explains the weird smell in his car. Colonel Hayes opened her tablet and showed them the communication network data. We need to identify and neutralize 43 more infiltrators before they realize we've compromised their operation. That gives us maybe 48 hours before they abort and call in their main fleet. What do you need from us? Nancy asked. Information. These agents have been in contact with each other. They've shared data about successful infiltration techniques. If we can analyze their methods, we can predict where the others are hiding. Dr. Rodriguez projected a holographic map in the air above her tablet. Red dots marked confirmed infiltrator locations. They're concentrating on suburban areas with high veteran populations, places where they expected to find the most submissive civilians. Marcus laughed. They specifically targeted neighborhoods full of former soldiers because they thought we'd be the easiest to control. The psychological profile states that humans who accept military discipline will naturally submit to any authority figure, Colonel Hayes read. They completely misunderstood what military training actually does to people. Frank cracked his knuckles. Military training teaches you to follow legitimate orders from legitimate authority. It also teaches you to identify and neutralize illegitimate threats. Nancy was already pulling out her phone. I've got contacts in every HOA and city council in the region. Give me 2 hours and I'll have suspicious activity reports from 20 different communities. I can analyze their communication patterns, Helen Johnson offered. If they're using consistent infiltration methods, there will be predictable signatures. Colonel Hayes looked impressed. You people adapt quickly. Ma'am, we've been adapting to alien threats for 5 years, Marcus said. The difference is that now the threats are coming to us instead of us going to them. Dr. Rodriguez received a message on her tablet and frowned. We just intercepted a transmission from another infiltrator. They're moving to Phase 2 ahead of schedule. Something has made them nervous. What's Phase 2? Katie asked. Colonel Hayes read from the translated document. Active destabilization of local governments through manufactured crises, false flag, operations designed to make human authorities look incompetent and dangerous. Nancy nodded grimly. Classic psychological warfare. Create chaos, then present yourself as the solution. How long do we have? Marcus asked. The transmission indicated Phase 2 begins tomorrow night, Dr. Rodriguez said. Simultaneous operations across all infiltrated communities. Frank stood up and stretched. Then we better get to work. Nancy, start making those calls. Helen, fire up your analysis equipment. Johnson, see if any of your old Army contacts are still active. Marcus looked at Colonel Hayes. What are our orders? Officially, you're all civilians, and this is above your clearance level, she said. Unofficially, you know these communities better than any intelligence team we could deploy. You know who belongs and who doesn't. You know what normal looks like. Katie raised her hand like she was in school. What about those of us who aren't veterans? How can we help? Dr. Rodriguez smiled. You're the secret weapon they never accounted for. Military families and veteran support networks. You've been living with people who know how to fight, but you also know how normal civilian life works. You can spot the differences they can't fake. Colonel Hayes gathered her equipment. We'll establish a command post at the military base. Marcus, I need you to coordinate local intelligence gathering. The rest of you watch for anything unusual. Any new authority figures, any changes in routine procedures, any situations that feel wrong. As the military vehicles left, the neighbors remained on Marcus's porch making plans. The aliens had made a fundamental mistake. They had studied human behavior, but they had never understood human nature. They were about to learn the difference. The next morning started with phone calls. Nancy had contacted every person she knew in local government, homeowner associations, and community organizations. By 9 o'clock, she had compiled a list of 37 suspicious new officials who had appeared in the last year. It's a pattern, she explained to Marcus over coffee in his kitchen. Every single one has perfect credentials but no personal history. No old friends, no family photos, no stories about growing up anywhere specific. Frank knocked on the back door and let himself in. He carried a duffel bag that clinked when he set it down. I've been talking to the other veterans in surrounding neighborhoods. We've got confirmation of weird security officials in 8 different communities. Helen Johnson arrived with her laptop and several pieces of electronic equipment. I've been analyzing communication signals in our area. There's definitely encrypted traffic on frequencies that shouldn't exist for civilian security. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Colonel Hayes. Phase 2 confirmed starting tonight. Local teams authorized to assist. Stay safe. Katie came, downstairs dressed for work. She taught at the elementary school and couldn't take the day off without raising suspicions. I'll keep my eyes open for anything strange at school. The principal mentioned they might get a new security consultant. Today, don't approach anyone suspicious alone, Marcus warned. These aliens are dangerous when cornered. After Katie left, the remaining 4 people spread Marcus's dining room table with maps, photos, and communication intercepts. They worked like a military intelligence team because essentially that's what they were. Retired but not forgotten. Nancy pointed to locations on the map. Based on the pattern, I think there are infiltrators here, here, and here. She marked 3 spots with red pins. All positions where someone could monitor large numbers of people and gather behavioral data. Frank opened his duffel bag and revealed an assortment of surveillance equipment. I may have kept some things when I retired. Completely legal, of course. Helen set up her laptop and connected several scanning devices. The communication frequencies are definitely alien. I'm picking up transmission bursts every 15 minutes. They're reporting to someone. Marcus studied the map and made connections between the marked locations. They're not just gathering intelligence. Look at the positions. School district offices, municipal security, HOA management companies. These are all places where they could start creating problems that look like human failures. His phone rang. Dr. Rodriguez's voice sounded urgent. Marcus, we need you at the base immediately. We've broken their communication codes and the phase. 2 targets are worse than we thought. I'll be right there. Marcus turned to his neighbors. Keep monitoring communications. Don't engage any suspicious persons. If something feels wrong, call Colonel Hayes immediately. At the military base, Dr. Rodriguez led Marcus to a secure briefing room, where holographic displays showed alien communication networks across multiple star systems. The scope was staggering. They're not just infiltrating human communities, she explained. This is a coordinated operation against 3 different species. The Zelkins are testing their soft invasion technique on multiple targets simultaneously. Colonel Hayes joined them and activated a larger display. The other species fell for it. The Antarans lost 6 major cities to infiltration-induced chaos. The Vorthon government collapsed when their security forces turned out to be alien imposters. What about us? Marcus asked. We're the test case for psychological manipulation, Dr. Rodriguez said. The other species have centralized authority structures. Take out the leaders and the population follows. But humans have this annoying habit of local initiative and individual resistance. The display showed intelligence reports from other theaters. Both the Antaran and Vorton populations had waited for official instructions when crises began. They followed established chains of command, even when those chains were compromised. When their leaders failed them, they became helpless. Humans don't work that way, Colonel Hayes said. When authority fails, we improvise new authority. When systems break down, we build new systems. The aliens can't understand how a species can function without rigid hierarchy. Marcus looked at the communication intercepts. So Phase 2 is designed to make our local authorities look incompetent and dangerous. Exactly. Create emergencies that human officials can't handle. Make the population lose faith in human leadership. Then step in as the competent alternatives who can restore order. Dr. Rodriguez highlighted specific Phase 2 targets on the map. They're planning simultaneous incidents at schools, shopping centers, and residential areas. Situations that will require immediate response from local authorities who have been secretly replaced with aliens. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Katie's school is on this list. Every school in the region is on this list, Colonel Hayes said. They're planning to create situations that make human security look incompetent, while alien infiltrators demonstrate superior capability. What kind of situations? Dr. Rodriguez pulled up translated operation plans. Simulated terrorist threats, fake chemical spills, staged violent incidents, all designed to create panic while alien agents prove they can handle crises better than human authorities. Marcus understood the psychological strategy. Humans would naturally turn to whoever seemed most competent in an emergency. If alien infiltrators consistently outperformed human officials, people would start trusting the aliens more than their own species. But there's a problem with their plan, Colonel Hayes said. They based it on intelligence gathered from communities, full of veterans. They think they understand how humans react to authority in crisis situations. They don't know about veteran networks, Marcus realized. They think each community is isolated and dependent on official channels. Right. They never studied how information actually flows through human society. They don't understand that. Frank talks to Nancy, who knows someone at the police department who served with someone at the fire station. Dr. Rodriguez showed him communication logs from the infiltrators. They're reporting back to their commanders that human communities have standard civilian populations with typical compliance patterns. They have no idea that half their target neighborhoods are full of people with military training. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Nancy. New security consultant just arrived at the elementary school. Something's wrong with the way he walks. I need to get back, Marcus said. My neighbors are tracking suspicious activity and Phase 2 just started. Colonel Hayes handed him a military communicator. This connects directly to our command center. If you identify an active infiltrator, we can have a response team there in minutes. What about rules of engagement? These things look human. Officially, we can't authorize civilian action against foreign agents, Colonel Hayes said. Unofficially, you're all veterans who know how to handle hostile contacts. Use your best judgment. Marcus drove back to Riverside Heights while monitoring communications from the base. Reports were coming in from across the region. Unusual security alerts at shopping centers, suspicious emergency drills at schools, new officials appearing at city halls with urgent policy recommendations. He parked at his house and walked quickly to Nancy's front door. She met him before he could knock. The school situation is developing fast, she said. The new security consultant showed up right after you left. He's been asking detailed questions about emergency procedures and student evacuation routes. Frank appeared from around the side of Nancy's house. I've been watching with binoculars. The guy moves wrong, too mechanical, and he's taking pictures of things that don't make sense for a security assessment. Helen's voice came from her radio. I'm picking up increased communication traffic on the alien frequencies. Something's being coordinated. Marcus activated his military communicator. Command, this is Marcus. We have confirmed suspicious activity at the elementary school, requesting guidance on civilian safety protocols. Colonel Hayes responded immediately. Marcus, intelligence indicates the school operation is designed to create a hostage situation that local police can't handle. The infiltrator will then position himself as the hero who saves the children. Katie's in there, Marcus said. We know. But if we send in military forces, it blows our intelligence operation and warns the other infiltrators. We need them to think their plan is working until we can hit all locations simultaneously. Nancy grabbed Marcus's arm. What if we don't wait for them to start the fake crisis? What if we create our own emergency that forces the infiltrator to reveal himself? Frank nodded slowly. something that looks like a normal human response but puts pressure on the alien to act outside his programmed behavior. Marcus thought about the alien he had captured the night before. Under stress, it had reverted to unnatural speech patterns and aggressive behavior that no human would display in that situation. We need to make him think the plan is compromised without revealing that we know what he is, Marcus said. Force him to make decisions faster than his human disguise can handle. Helen's radio crackled. Communication spike. Multiple agents are receiving new orders. Phase 2 is accelerating. Marcus looked at his neighbors and made a decision that would change everything. Then we accelerate too. Marcus called Katie on her classroom phone. Emergency drill in 10 minutes, he said. Get your kids ready to evacuate, but don't use the normal procedures. What kind of drill? Katie asked. She sounded confused, but not panicked. Military families. Learn to handle unexpected situations. Fire alarm malfunction. The system might go off randomly. When it does, take your class out through the side door instead of the main exit. Keep them calm and away from the front of the building. Katie understood immediately. In a real emergency, she would follow official procedures. In a fake emergency designed to test responses, following different procedures would force anyone watching to adapt their plans. Nancy was already on her phone calling other parents and school employees. She had contacts throughout the community and could spread information faster than any official communication system. Frank loaded his surveillance equipment into his truck. I'm setting up observation positions around the school perimeter. If this alien tries to create an incident, we'll have it documented from multiple angles. Helen continued monitoring alien communications. The traffic is increasing. They're definitely coordinating something big. Multiple facilities across the region. Marcus contacted Colonel Hayes on the military communicator. We're going to force the school infiltrator to reveal himself early. Can your teams hit the other locations? When that happens? We're positioning assets now, the colonel responded. When you give us confirmation of hostile intent, we can move on all targets simultaneously. The plan was simple but risky. By changing normal school procedures, they would force the alien infiltrator to adapt his fake emergency scenario. Under pressure to improvise, he would likely make mistakes that revealed his true nature. Marcus drove to the school and parked across the street. Frank was already in position with cameras and communication equipment. Nancy had stationed herself at the main office to monitor official channels. Helen remained at her house tracking alien communications. At exactly 2:15, the school fire alarm went off. But instead of the orderly evacuation the infiltrator expected, chaos erupted. Teachers led students out different exits. Parents arrived to pick up children. Community volunteers appeared with emergency supplies. Marcus watched through binoculars as the fake security consultant emerged from the building. The alien looked confused by the unexpected response patterns. He spoke rapidly into a radio, clearly, asking for instructions that weren't coming. Frank, are you getting this? Marcus asked into his radio. Recording everything. This guy is definitely not human. Watch how he moves when he's stressed. The alien was trying to direct the evacuation, according to his planned scenario, but the teachers were following Katie's alternate procedures. Children were being taken to different assembly points. Parents were arriving faster than the infiltrator expected. He's losing control of the situation, Nancy reported from inside the building. He keeps asking why the evacuation procedures aren't being followed correctly. Helen's voice crackled over the radio. Major communication spike. The aliens are receiving abort orders. Something has gone wrong with their plan. Marcus realized they had created exactly the right kind of pressure. The infiltrator needed a crisis that would make human authorities look incompetent, while he appeared competent. But the human response was too coordinated and effective for his scenario to work. Through his binoculars, Marcus saw the alien pull out a device that definitely wasn't standard security equipment. The device looked like the neural scanner they had found on the first infiltrator. He's going active, Marcus warned. All units, the target is using alien technology. The fake security consultant pointed his scanner at groups of children and began pushing buttons. Whatever he was doing, it wasn't part of any normal security protocol. Marcus made his decision. He left his observation position and walked directly toward the school. This was about to become a close-quarters situation, and his neighbors needed backup. Katie saw him approaching and led her class toward the side parking lot where parents were waiting. She had gotten all 23 children out safely through the alternate route. The alien noticed Marcus immediately. Something about Marcus's movement or posture triggered recognition. The creature's disguise began to slip as stress hormones affected its shape-shifting ability. "You are not authorized personnel," the alien said in that same unnaturally formal tone Marcus had heard the night before. "This is a restricted emergency zone." "I'm here to pick up my sister," Marcus replied, calmly. "She teaches here." "All civilian evacuation must follow designated protocols," the alien insisted. "Return to the authorized assembly area." Marcus pretended to look around, confused. "Which assembly area? People are going to different places." The alien's face twitched. Its human disguise was breaking down under the stress of an uncontrolled situation. "There is only one authorized assembly area. Compliance with emergency procedures is mandatory." "But the teachers are taking kids to different areas," Marcus said. "Maybe we should ask the principal which procedure to follow." That suggestion seemed to break something in the alien's programming. It started speaking rapidly in its own language while pointing the scanner at Marcus. The device beeped and flashed in ways that definitely weren't human technology. Frank's voice came through Marcus's earpiece. "That's not a security scanner. It's reading biological signatures, military tech." Nancy emerged from the school building and walked toward them. "Is there a problem here? This gentleman seems confused about our emergency procedures." The alien spun toward Nancy with jerky, unnatural movements. "You will return to the building and implement correct evacuation protocols. The current procedures are unauthorized and dangerous." "I'm sorry, but who authorized you to change our established safety procedures?" Nancy asked. She had switched into her Air Force intelligence voice, polite but absolutely unyielding. The alien's disguise was completely failing now. Its facial features were shifting back toward its true appearance. Gray skin, large dark eyes, too many teeth. Several parents and teachers were starting to notice. "I am the designated emergency authority for this facility," the creature said. "You will comply with security directives or face consequences." Marcus stepped closer. "What kind of consequences? What authority do you represent exactly?" The alien pulled out its weapon. Not the fake pistol from the night before, but clearly alien technology. The weapon hummed with energy and had targeting displays that moved independently. "That's definitely not standard police equipment," Frank announced loudly from his position. Parents began moving children away from the building. Helen's voice came over all radios simultaneously. "All alien agents are receiving termination orders. They're abandoning the infiltration plan and going to direct action." The creature raised its weapon toward the crowd of children and parents. "You will submit to authority or experience consequences." Marcus moved at the same moment the alien decided to fire. Years of combat experience against Zelkan forces had taught him their reaction times and weapon targeting systems. He rolled, left as an energy beam scorched the pavement where he had been standing. Nancy was already directing civilians to cover behind parked cars. Frank was documenting everything while calling for backup. Katie had gotten her students to safety behind the school building. The alien fired again, this time at a group of parents. Marcus tackled the creature before it could aim properly. The energy beam went wide and burned a hole in a tree. Fighting. A Zelkan in close quarters was different from subduing one. They were stronger than humans and had natural weapons, but Marcus had learned their weaknesses during 3 tours of combat. He struck specific nerve clusters that would temporarily paralyze the creature's limbs. The alien dropped its weapon and made sounds like grinding metal. Its disguise was completely gone now, revealing its true reptilian form. "Command, this is Marcus," he said into his communicator while restraining the alien. "We have confirmed hostile action at the elementary school. Multiple witnesses to alien technology and assault on civilians." Colonel Hayes responded immediately. "Confirmed. All teams are moving on designated targets. Excellent work." Frank walked over with his camera still recording. That was the most impressive takedown I've seen since basic training. Nancy was checking on the civilians. No injuries, everyone's accounted for. The kids think it was some kind of special effects demonstration. Marcus looked down at the unconscious alien. This one was more dangerous than the first. It was ready to use lethal force against children. Helen arrived with her communication equipment. I intercepted their final transmission. The infiltration plan is officially canceled. All agents have been ordered to extract or eliminate witnesses. Katie came running from the side of the building. Marcus, are you hurt? That thing had some kind of ray gun. I'm fine, but we need to warn the other communities. If all the infiltrators are going active simultaneously, people are going to be in real danger. Colonel Hayes arrived with a full military response team. The alien was loaded into a secure transport, while Dr. Rodriguez collected its equipment for analysis. The simultaneous response worked perfectly, Colonel Hayes said. When the aliens lost control of the narrative at multiple locations, their commanders panicked and revealed the entire operation. 3 days after the school incident, Marcus sat in a secure conference room at the military base. The room contained representatives from 12 different human colonies, the Galactic Council, and several alien species who had been targeted by similar Zelkan infiltration operations. Admiral Susan Clark stood at the head of the table next to a holographic display showing the complete Zelkan intelligence network. 43 infiltration sites across human space. 217 alien agents captured or eliminated. Over 3,000 human communities that had been under surveillance. The scope of this operation was unprecedented, Admiral Clark began. The Zelkans spent 2 years studying human society and concluded that we were the ideal target for psychological manipulation. Dr. Rodriguez activated a series of displays showing captured alien documents. They believed humans were naturally submissive to authority and would collapse if their leadership structures were compromised. They studied dozens of other species and found consistent patterns that suggested this approach would work. Ambassador Telvar from the Antaran Confederation spoke up. The same techniques were highly effective against our people. When our security forces revealed themselves to be alien imposters, our populations waited for instructions from higher authorities. But those authorities had also been compromised. Commander Yinth of the Vorthan Defense Corps nodded agreement. Our centralized command structure made us vulnerable. When they replaced our key leaders, the rest of our forces followed orders without question. We never suspected that the orders came from hostile aliens. Marcus had been asked to attend because his encounter with the first infiltrator had triggered the investigation that exposed the entire network. He still found it strange to be sitting at a table with alien dignitaries discussing galactic strategy. Admiral Clark highlighted a section of captured intelligence. The Zelkans classified humans as a Class II invasion target. Minimal military preparation required. They expected to overwhelm us through psychological manipulation rather than direct force. Dr. Rodriguez pulled up comparative data. They had detailed files on 47 different species. Humans were rated as the least likely to resist infiltration because of our apparent compliance with authority structures. What changed their assessment? Asked General Kothan from the Rigelian Alliance. Marcus cleared his throat. They never studied veteran populations. They saw people following traffic laws and paying taxes, and concluded that humans automatically obey anyone in a uniform. Explain, Ambassador Telvar requested. Admiral Clark nodded to Marcus. The Zelkans infiltrated communities specifically because they contained high concentrations of former military personnel. They thought veterans would be the most compliant with authority figures. Instead, veterans were the ones most likely to recognize and resist illegitimate authority. Marcus continued. Military training doesn't make you submissive. It teaches you to identify and follow legitimate orders while questioning suspicious commands. Dr. Rodriguez showed psychological profiles the aliens had compiled. They documented what they interpreted as submission behaviors, humans standing in organized lines, following instructions from uniformed personnel, responding to emergency signals with coordinated movement. They mistook discipline for weakness, Admiral Clark said. They saw organized behavior and concluded that humans couldn't think independently. Commander, Yinth studied the data carefully. Your species maintains military training among civilian populations. This is unusual. Marcus nodded. Most of my neighbors are veterans, teachers, shopkeepers, retirees. But they remember their training. When threats appear, they respond appropriately. The aliens never researched human military history, Dr. Rodriguez added. They didn't understand concepts like citizen soldiers or veteran integration into civilian society. Admiral Clark activated a new display showing communication intercepts from the failed operation. When their infiltrators encountered unexpected resistance, they assumed they had found isolated anomalies. They never realized that resistance capability was distributed throughout human society. Ambassador Telvar appeared troubled. Our societies separate military and civilian populations clearly. Our warriors serve in dedicated roles while civilians focus on peaceful activities. This makes infiltration easier, but also makes our civilians vulnerable. Humans don't separate that way, Marcus explained. People serve their time in the military, then return to civilian life but retain their training. A teacher might also be a former sniper. A shopkeeper might have been a demolitions expert. General Cothan leaned forward with interest. So any human civilian might actually be a trained warrior. Not might be, Admiral Clark corrected. In many communities, most adults have some military experience. The Zelkins specifically targeted areas with high veteran populations because they thought former soldiers would be the most obedient to authority. Dr. Rodriguez showed footage from the school incident. When the infiltrator threatened children, multiple adults with military HOA training responded immediately. They didn't wait for official instructions or wonder about jurisdiction. They identified a threat and neutralized it. This explains why their psychological warfare was ineffective, Commander Yinth observed. Your civilians are actually trained combatants. Marcus shook his head. We're not combatants. We're people who chose civilian lives but remember how to fight when necessary. There's a difference. What difference? Ambassador Telvar asked. Combatants look for fights. Veterans avoid fights but end them quickly when they can't be avoided. The aliens expected to intimidate us with shows of force. Instead, they found people who had seen real force and weren't impressed by theatrical displays. Admiral Clark brought up strategic analyses from other galactic powers. The failure of this infiltration operation has caused several species to reassess their evaluation of human military capabilities. Dr. Rodriguez highlighted intelligence reports. The Zelkin Empire has officially classified humans as Pattern Anomaly Species 001. They're requesting a complete revision of invasion planning protocols for any species that might have similar characteristics. What characteristics specifically? General Cothan asked. Marcus thought about his neighbors and the past few days. Distributed military experience, local initiative, questioning authority while respecting legitimate leadership, the ability to coordinate without centralized command, the willingness to fight for your communities even when it's not your official job, Admiral Clark added. Ambassador Telvar looked puzzled. But if your civilians are trained warriors, why do you appear peaceful? Our intelligence also suggested humans avoid conflict. Because we choose peace, Marcus said. Veterans know what war costs. We've seen what happens when talking fails. So we're very motivated to make talking work. Dr. Rodriguez pulled up social analysis data. The aliens interpreted conflict avoidance as weakness. They didn't understand that experienced warriors are often the most committed to peaceful solutions. Until peaceful solutions become impossible, Admiral Clark noted, then they're also the most effective at ending conflicts quickly. Commander Yinth reviewed the tactical reports from the infiltrator captures. 38 aliens with advanced training and equipment were defeated by small groups of human civilians. This suggests your assessment of human military capability has been significantly underestimated. By everyone, apparently, General Cothan added. Our own intelligence rated humans as a developing military power with limited experience. Marcus almost laughed. Limited experience. We've been fighting wars for 5,000 years. Just because we're new to space doesn't mean we're new to conflict. Admiral Clark activated a final display showing updated galactic threat assessments. Several powers are requesting formal non-aggression treaties with Earth. The demonstration of human resistance capabilities has been noted by civilizations throughout this sector. Dr. Rodriguez smiled. The Zelkins have also released their complete intelligence files on human society to other powers as a warning. They want to make sure no one else makes the same mistake. What mistake was that? Ambassador Telvar asked. Marcus stood up and looked around the room at the assembled alien representatives. Assuming that because humans live peacefully, we've forgotten how to fight. Thinking that because we follow rules, we can't break them when necessary. Believing that, because we prefer order, we can't handle chaos. The mistake, Admiral Clark concluded, was thinking that human civilization is weak because it's peaceful. They discovered that the opposite is true. Our civilization is peaceful because it's strong enough to choose peace. Commander Yinth nodded. Slowly. A valuable lesson for all of us. The meeting concluded with formal agreements on intelligence sharing and defensive cooperation. Several species wanted to learn about human veteran integration programs. Others requested cultural exchange, programs to better understand human society. As the representatives filed out, Admiral Clark approached Marcus. How do you feel about being the person who exposed an entire alien intelligence network? Marcus thought about it. I feel like I was walking down my street and saw something that didn't belong. The rest just followed from that. Simple as that? Should be simple as that. Someone threatens your neighborhood, you deal with it. 2 weeks after the Galactic Conference, Marcus received an unexpected visit. Admiral Clark arrived at his house with a small entourage and a very serious expression. We have a situation, she said without preamble. The revelation about human society has created complications we didn't anticipate. Marcus invited them into his living room, where Katie was grading papers at the dining table. She had become something of a celebrity at school after helping coordinate the alien capture. Parents kept asking her for security advice. What kind of complications? Marcus asked. Dr. Rodriguez opened her tablet and showed him news feeds from across the galaxy. Multiple species are requesting military training exchanges with Earth. They want to learn how to create veteran populations that integrate into civilian society. That sounds positive, Katie said, looking up from her papers. Admiral Clark shook her head. The problem is that some of these requests are coming from species currently engaged in active conflicts. They want to militarize their civilian populations for ongoing wars. Marcus understood immediately. They think we can teach them how to turn shopkeepers into soldiers. Exactly. They've completely misunderstood what makes human society work. They think veteran integration is a military program instead of a social structure. Dr. Rodriguez showed him specific requests. The Corathan Empire wants to train their retail workers in combat techniques. The Sectilian Federation is asking for programs to put military veterans in every neighborhood specifically for security purposes. They're trying to weaponize their societies, Marcus said. That's not what we do. Katie put down her papers and walked over. Our veterans aren't soldiers pretending to be civilians. They're civilians who used to be soldiers. There's a huge difference. Admiral Clark nodded. That's exactly the distinction. They're missing. And it's causing problems with other galactic powers who are starting to view Earth as a militaristic threat. Dr. Rodriguez pulled up intelligence reports. Several neutral species are expressing concern about hidden human military assets. They're interpreting veteran integration as a form of military deception. Marcus felt frustrated. We're not hiding anything. People serve their time, then they come home and live normal lives. It's not a secret conspiracy. But to species that maintain strict separation between military and civilian populations, it looks exactly like a secret conspiracy, Admiral Clark explained. They can't understand how former warriors can genuinely become peaceful citizens. Katie sat down with a worried expression. Are we in trouble? Is the galaxy going to see us as a threat? Some powers already do, Dr. Rodriguez admitted. The Hegemony Council has raised formal concerns about Earth's militarized civilian infrastructure. They're demanding inspections to verify that our communities aren't actually military installations. Marcus laughed, but there wasn't much humor in it. They want to inspect Riverside Heights to make sure our HOA isn't a secret military base. It gets worse, Admiral Clark said. The Zelkan Empire is claiming that their infiltration operation was justified as a defensive measure against human military expansion. They're saying we forced them to spy on us, Katie said incredulously. They're arguing that human society represents a novel form of militarization that threatens galactic stability. They want the Galactic Council to impose restrictions on veteran integration programs. Dr. Rodriguez showed them transcripts of Zelkan diplomatic communications. They're portraying themselves as victims of human deception. They claim Earth deliberately concealed the military nature of our civilian populations. Marcus stood up and paced around the living room. This is insane. We're being punished for having veterans who live normal lives after their service. The broader issue is that most galactic civilizations don't understand human social structures, Admiral Clark said. They see veteran integration as either a military program or a form of deception. The concept of citizens who choose peace but retain warrior capabilities is outside their experience. Katie looked thoughtful. What if we explained it differently? Instead of talking about military training, what if we focused on the civilian aspects? How do you mean? Dr. Rodriguez asked. Marcus isn't dangerous because he's a veteran. He's effective because he's a citizen who cares about his community. The military training just gives him tools to protect what he cares about. Admiral Clark considered this. That's actually a crucial distinction. Other species see military capability as the primary characteristic. They're missing the civilian motivation. Marcus nodded. Frank doesn't check his perimeter every night because he's a soldier. He does it because he wants his family to be safe. Nancy doesn't analyze suspicious people because she's an intelligence officer. She does it because she cares about the children in her neighborhood. Dr. Rodriguez made notes on her tablet. The civilian motivation is the key factor they're not accounting for. They understand professional warriors fighting for duty or orders. They don't understand citizens fighting for home and family. That might be why their infiltration failed so completely, Admiral Clark realized. They tried to intimidate people who were protecting their homes. You can't scare someone away from defending their own family. Katie smiled. Maybe that's what we need to explain to the galaxy. We're not a militarized civilian population. We're a civilian population that refuses to be helpless. Marcus's phone rang. The caller ID showed Frank from across the street. Marcus, turn on the news. There's something about aliens on every channel. Marcus activated his wall screen and found a news broadcast showing footage from the school incident. The reporter was describing it as evidence of Earth's hidden military infrastructure in civilian communities. The footage shows rapid response, capabilities and coordinated action that suggest extensive military preparation. The reporter said, experts question whether Earth's civilian populations are actually military assets disguised as non-combatants. Katie shook her head in disgust. They're making it sound like we planned the whole thing, like we've been preparing for alien infiltration. In a way we have been, Admiral Clark said. Not specifically for alien infiltration, but for threats in general. That's what veteran integration accomplishes. It creates communities that can respond to unexpected dangers. Dr. Rodriguez showed them more news feeds. The story is spreading across human space too. Some colonies are proud of the demonstration of human capabilities. Others are worried about being classified as military targets. Marcus watched footage of his neighbors being interviewed. Frank was explaining neighborhood watch procedures, while Nancy discussed community emergency planning. Both of them looked like exactly what they were, concerned citizens who wanted their community to be safe. The problem is perspective, Marcus realized. From inside human society, this looks normal. Responsible people taking care of their neighborhoods. From outside, it looks like a military operation disguised as civilian activity. That's exactly right, Admiral Clark agreed. And the Zelkans are exploiting that perception to justify their actions and deflect attention from their own illegal infiltration program. Katie turned off the news with an annoyed gesture. So what do we do? How do we explain that we're not trying to threaten anyone? Dr. Rodriguez looked up from her tablet. Actually, I think we should embrace the misunderstanding. Everyone stared at her. Think about it, she continued. The galaxy is learning that humans are much more capable than they assumed. Instead of trying to convince them we're harmless, maybe we should let them understand that we're peaceful by choice. Admiral Clark smiled slowly. A reputation for hidden strength might be more valuable than a reputation for obvious weakness. Marcus considered this. You mean let them think we're more dangerous than we really are? I mean, let them understand that we're exactly as dangerous as we choose to be, Dr. Rodriguez corrected. The Zelkans made the mistake of assuming human peace meant human weakness. Maybe other species should learn from their mistake. Katie nodded thoughtfully. If other civilizations think twice before trying to intimidate or manipulate human communities, that's probably good for everyone. Admiral Clark stood up to leave. The Galactic Council is scheduling hearings on human militarization concerns. We'll need representatives who can explain our society to species that don't understand it. What kind of representatives? Marcus asked. Veterans who are clearly civilians. People who can demonstrate that military training and civilian life aren't contradictory. Marcus looked around his living room with its family photos and civilian furniture and normal suburban life. You want me to go to the Galactic Council and explain why veterans make good neighbors? I want you to explain why human civilization works, Admiral Clark said, and why other species should think very carefully before they assume our peaceful nature makes us easy targets. As the military delegation left, Marcus and Katie sat on their front porch watching the neighborhood. Children played in yards while their parents worked in gardens. Frank was teaching his grandson how to change a tire. Nancy was helping an elderly neighbor with groceries. It looked exactly like what it was, a peaceful community where people took care of each other. But now, the galaxy knew that underneath that peace lay something much more dangerous. Not because humans were violent. 6 months later, Marcus stood before the Galactic Council in a simple civilian suit, carrying a briefcase that contained no weapons or military equipment, just photos of his neighborhood and documents about human society. The council chamber held representatives from 47 different species, many of whom had never seen a human before the Zelkan infiltration incident. The air recycling system hummed quietly, while translation devices processed dozens of different languages simultaneously. Ambassador Telvar from the Antaran Confederation spoke first. Representative Johnson, the Council seeks to understand the nature of human-civilian military integration. Your species appears to maintain combat-capable populations within non-military social structures. Marcus activated a holographic display showing Riverside Heights. Honored delegates, what you're seeing is not a military installation. It's a neighborhood where people live, work, and raise families. Yet intelligence reports indicate this. Community successfully defeated trained alien operatives, pointed out General Kothan from the Rigelian Alliance. Yes, they did, Marcus agreed, because the people who live there care about protecting their community. Commander Yinth leaned forward, explained the distinction between caring about protection and military preparation. Marcus showed them photos of his neighbors. This is Frank. He owns a hardware store and teaches children how to build birdhouses. He's also a former Navy SEAL who notices when strangers ask unusual questions about the neighborhood. He switched to another photo. This is Nancy. She teaches kindergarten and organizes community events. She's also former Air Force intelligence who recognizes when someone's background story doesn't match their behavior patterns. These individuals maintain military awareness while pursuing civilian occupations, observed Counselor Zeth from the Crystalline Collective. They maintain awareness because they pursue civilian occupations, Marcus corrected. Frank cares about security because he has customers who trust him. Nancy watches for threats because she has students who depend on her. Dr. Rodriguez joined Marcus at the presentation podium. The Council has requested analysis of human social structures compared to other galactic civilizations. What we found explains why the Zelkan infiltration failed so completely. She activated comparative data displays. Most species maintain clear separation between military and civilian populations. Warriors serve in dedicated roles while civilians focus on peaceful activities. This creates efficient specialization, but also creates vulnerabilities. Restriksi. Telver nodded. Our military forces protect our civilian populations, who lack combat training or threat awareness. When Zelkan infiltrators replaced our security forces, our civilians had no way to recognize the deception, Commander Yinth added. We waited for instructions from authorities who were actually hostile aliens. Dr. Rodriguez highlighted human demographic data. Human society evolved differently. Military service is temporary rather than permanent. People serve for a few years, then return to civilian life but retain their training and awareness. This creates resilience, Marcus explained. If you compromise our official security forces, you still face civilian populations that include people with military experience. Counselor Zeth displayed concern indicators through its crystalline structure. This suggests human society is militarized throughout all levels. No, Marcus said firmly. It suggests human society refuses to be helpless. There's a difference between being militarized and being prepared. Katie had been invited to attend. As a representative of human civilians affected by the infiltration, she stood up from the observer section. May I address the council? The presiding officer granted permission. I'm a school teacher, Katie said. I have no military training, but when an alien threatened my students, I didn't wait for someone else to save them. I got them to safety because that's what teachers do. She walked to the center of the chamber. My brother Marcus has military training so he could fight the alien. I don't have military training, so I protected the children. We work together because we both care about our community. Dr. Rodriguez pulled up social analysis data. Human society integrates military and civilian populations through shared values rather than shared training. Veterans and non-veterans cooperate because they have common goals. What goals specifically? Asked General Cothan. Marcus thought about his neighborhood in the past 6 months. Protecting our families, maintaining our communities, preserving our way of life. These aren't military objectives. They're human objectives. But you use military methods to achieve civilian goals, Ambassador Telver observed. We use whatever methods are necessary, Katie corrected. Sometimes, that's military action. Usually it's civilian cooperation. The choice depends on the situation. Commander Yinth reviewed tactical reports on his display. Your response to the infiltration involved both military and civilian elements operating in coordination. This suggests systematic preparation. Marcus nodded. We prepare for threats the same way we prepare for natural disasters. We hope we never need the preparation, but we're not willing to be helpless if something happens. Dr. Rodriguez showed them footage from the school incident. Watch carefully. You'll see military veterans responding to the alien threat, while civilian teachers evacuate children. Both groups are doing what they're trained to do, but they're motivated by the same desire to protect their community. The council spent several minutes reviewing the footage and discussing its implications in various languages. Finally, the presiding officer called for order. The evidence suggests that human society represents a novel form of social organization, the officer announced. Military capabilities are distributed through civilian populations, but civilian values guide the use of those capabilities. That's correct, Marcus agreed. We don't fight because we're soldiers. We fight because we're citizens. Counselor Zeth pulsed with what Marcus had learned indicated deep thought. This explains why psychological manipulation was ineffective against your species. You cannot intimidate people who are fighting for their homes and families. It also explains why military conquest would be extremely difficult, General Cothan added. Every human community contains individuals capable of resistance operations. Ambassador Telvar looked troubled. Some council members remain concerned about the implications for galactic security. A species where any civilian might be a trained combatant presents unique challenges. Katie stepped forward again. With respect, Ambassador, I think you're still missing the point. We don't want to fight anyone. We want to live peaceful lives with our families and communities. But you're prepared to fight if necessary, Commander Yinth observed. Of course, Marcus said. Wouldn't you fight to protect your family? Our civilians would not be capable of effective resistance, Commander Yinth admitted. They would rely on military forces for protection. What happens if your military forces are compromised? Dr. Rodriguez asked. What happens if they're infiltrated or defeated? The silence in the chamber was telling. Marcus activated a new display showing human expansion across the galaxy. Over the past 6 months, dozens of species have requested defensive alliance treaties with Earth. Not because they want our military forces, but because they want the security that comes from having populations that can't be easily conquered. We've also received requests for cultural exchange programs, Katie added. Species that want to learn how to integrate their own veterans into civilian communities. Dr. Rodriguez showed statistical analyses. The Zelkin infiltration revealed a vulnerability that affects most galactic civilizations. Centralized authority structures can be compromised. Specialized military forces can be defeated. But distributed capability combined with civilian motivation is much harder to overcome. The presiding officer consulted with advisors before speaking. The council recognizes that human social organization represents a legitimate defensive strategy, rather than an aggressive threat. However, concerns remain about the potential for misuse of these capabilities. Marcus had expected this. What assurances does the council require? Evidence that human military capabilities are genuinely defensive rather than expansionist. Katie smiled. The evidence is what happened with the Zelkin infiltration. When aliens threatened human communities, we defended ourselves. We didn't launch retaliatory strikes against Zelkin territory. We didn't demand compensation or territorial concessions. We just stopped the threat and went back to our normal lives. That demonstrates restraint, Ambassador Telvar acknowledged. It demonstrates something more important, Marcus said. It demonstrates that our military capabilities serve our civilian values, not the other way around. Dr. Rodriguez concluded the presentation with a final display. Human society works because our warriors choose to be civilians, and our civilians choose to be responsible for their own security. This creates communities that are both peaceful and resilient. The council voted to formally recognize